chosen one. People are so impressed by how you handled this disgusting situation. You were meant to break. That was the design. A trap layered with filth, lies, and pressure, engineered to provoke collapse. Instead, you stood steady and rose. Now they replay everything. Words spoken, words withheld. One question burns inside them. They threw you into the pit, expecting you to come out covered in the same filth they swim in daily. That was their strategy. Drag you down to a level where they're comfortable, where dysfunction is the language everyone speaks, where chaos is the currency of connection. They wanted you dirty so they could pretend everyone's the same, so they could justify their own corruption by pointing at yours, but you saw through it. You recognized the setup before you stepped in it. The whispers that somehow always found their way to your ears, the manufactured situations designed to trigger you, the people positioned like chess pieces to record your reaction. You saw all of it, and instead of taking the bait, you did something that's still confusing them. You walked out clean, not crying, not begging people to understand, not frantically defending yourself to anyone who'd listen. You walked out calm, composed, sharp, like you knew something they didn't, and you did. You understood that not everything that touches you has permission to mark you. You understood that their filth only contaminates if you agree to roll in it with them. Here's what most people would have done. Group chats late at night venting to anyone who'd listen, cryptic social media posts, calling people out by name, burning bridges, making sure everyone knew a certain version of events, posting receipts, going to war publicly. But you moved differently. You moved like someone who had already watched this movie and knew how it ends. You handled it with a precision that made people nervous, not because you were threatening, but because you were unnaturally composed. And that composure revealed something no one was ready for. You're not who anyone thought you were. You're not someone who can be manipulated into self-destruction. You're not someone who breaks under pressure. You're someone who gets refined by it. And that realization is spreading through everyone who's watching right now. They're starting to understand they severely underestimated who they were dealing with. Let's be honest about what you went through, though. This wasn't just uncomfortable. It was humiliating, degrading, the kind of disgusting situation designed to make you want to disappear. They wanted you to break character so badly because it would justify everything they whispered. They needed you to snap. Their entire narrative depended on your explosion, but you never gave them that scene. You observed instead of reacted. You calculated instead of combusted. You planned instead of panicked. And here's what's coming that can't be seen yet. That clean soul you protected is about to be rewarded in ways that will make jaws drop again. That discipline you showed is about to open doors beyond imagination. That restraint is about to become your most powerful weapon. While you were staying clean in the chaos, something unexpected started happening. You started gaining power, real power, not the fake influence others chase, not the shallow validation others crave, but the kind of power that makes rooms go quiet when you enter, the kind that makes people reconsider everything they thought they knew. And you gained it without fighting for it. In their world, power is taken through manipulation. Scheming happens, lies get told, people get stepped on, pieces of souls get traded for status. That's the only playbook they know. So when you started rising without using any of those tactics, it shattered their understanding of how success works. You're winning a game you refuse to play, and that's driving them insane. You didn't hustle for attention. You didn't perform for validation. You didn't beg anyone to see your worth. You just kept being you, consistent, authentic, unmovable, and suddenly you became magnetic. People started watching who never paid attention before. Respect started flowing from places never expected. Opportunities started appearing that weren't there yesterday, all because you refused to compromise who you are. Your integrity is becoming your superpower. While everyone else is marked by the dirt they rolled in to get ahead, you're standing there unmarked. And people can feel the difference energetically. They can sense who's real and who's faking. who has substance and who's just performing, and they're gravitating toward you like you're oxygen in a room full of smoke. You weren't climbing over anyone. You were being lifted because your energy demanded elevation. What makes this even more powerful is that you didn't try to impress anyone. You weren't auditioning for anyone's approval. You were just being genuine. And in a world drowning in pretense, authenticity stands out like a lighthouse in a storm. They watched you rise without selling out, and that exposed them. It revealed how much scheming they had to do just to maintain relevance, how many compromises they made, how many people they stepped on, how much of themselves they lost trying to be someone impressive, while you just evolved naturally by staying true to yourself. And now watch what's about to happen. The same people who overlooked you are going to start rewriting history, acting like belief in you always existed. The ones who talked behind your back are going to start quoting your words publicly. The ones who tried to dim your light are going to start celebrating it like extinguishers weren't being held, because you didn't just gain power, you redefined what power looks like. You saw the mess, you saw the lies, the backstabbing, the gossip, the betrayal wrapped in fake concern. You walked right through the middle of it, but here's what has everyone talking. You didn't absorb it. You didn't let it change who you are. You refused to become what you were exposed to. That decision changed everything, because most people don't realize how quickly they start smelling like the situations they're trying to escape. It's subtle at first. A little bitterness creeps in. A little cynicism takes root. A little hardness develops. Before they realize it, they've become the very thing they were fighting against. They've absorbed the toxicity they were trying to avoid, but you were surrounded by emotional sewage, and you never let it seep into your spirit. You were drowning in dysfunction, and you never let it define your behavior. That takes strength most people can't comprehend. It's easy to become what you're exposed to, natural even. Our brains are wired for it. You hit me, I hit back. You disrespect me, I disrespect you. Basic human nature. But you operated from something higher. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. You knew who you were. More importantly, you knew who you weren't going to become. You could have fought dirty. You had every right to. You could have matched their energy blow for blow. You had receipts that could have destroyed reputations. You had stories that could have ruined lives. But instead you chose something radical. You chose to protect your soul more than prove your point. That wasn't weakness, that was wisdom. That was knowing your peace matters more than temporary satisfaction. That was understanding that revenge might feel good for a moment, but regret lasts forever. You held your tongue when you could have burned everything down. You walked away when you could have waged war. You chose silence when you could have chosen destruction. And now people are watching you, wondering how you didn't crack, how bitterness didn't take root, how the filth didn't cling to you like smoke to clothes. It's because you made a choice every single day. Rise without revenge. Protect your spirit while chaos swirls around you. Stay soft in a hard situation. Keep your heart open when everything screams to close it. They thought they had you cornered. They thought they'd built the perfect trap. Lies designed to trigger your trauma. Situations engineered to break your spirit. People positioned to push you past your limits. They wanted one thing, a reaction they could weaponize, something loud, emotional, unhinged, that would complete their narrative. All they needed was one outburst, one moment of lost control, and they could label you unstable forever. They could point to that moment and say, "See, we were right about this person all along," but you saw the bait and walked past it. You recognized the trap and refused to step in. You let them talk. You let them spin their stories. You let them believe they were controlling the narrative. While you were doing something completely different in the silence, you were building, growing, learning, processing your pain privately, gathering wisdom from the warfare, getting stronger where no one could see, turning their attacks into your advantage. Instead of fighting fire with fire, you built something from the ashes, something they never anticipated, a platform. They created drama, You turned it into direction. They tried to block your path. You used their barricades as stepping stones. They dug pits. You turned them into wells. That's what's burning them right now. Not only did you survive what they threw at you, you used it. You alchemized their poison into medicine. Their plan didn't just fail, it backfired spectacularly, because now the very thing they meant to destroy you with is part of why people are drawn to you. Your story resonates because it's authentic. Your wisdom hits deep because it was earned through real suffering. Your peace is magnetic because people can feel it was forged in fire. And the best part, you never had to play dirty to get here. You didn't need to expose anyone. You didn't need to retaliate publicly. You didn't need to send subliminal shots. You let your growth speak. You let your elevation become the evidence. You let your transformation become louder than any words could be. Your focus became your revenge. And people are inspired now, not because you're perfect, but because you didn't let the worst chapter define the whole book. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. You protected your reputation by refusing to defend it. That sounds backwards until you understand the game they were playing. They wanted you in defense mode, scrambling, explaining, justifying, because someone constantly defending themselves looks guilty even when they're innocent. You understood that paradox. You knew that the moment you start explaining yourself to people who already decided you're guilty, you're playing a rigged game. The more you defend, the more suspicious you appear. The more you explain, the more they find to question. It's a trap with no exit. So you did something brilliant. You didn't enter the trap at all. Your reputation wasn't built on what you said about yourself. It was built on what you consistently demonstrated, and nothing you could say would be more powerful than what people could see with their own eyes. So you let your actions speak. You let your consistency testify. You let your character defend itself through undeniable evidence of who you actually are. While they were busy creating fictional versions of you, you were living as the real version. And eventually, reality always overpowers fiction. The truth is, people believe the lies at first because lies are exciting, drama is entertaining, scandals are shareable, but excitement fades, entertainment gets boring, and eventually people want substance, they want reality, they want truth. That's when your non-defense became your strongest defense, because you weren't giving them ammunition to twist, you weren't providing sound bites they could manipulate, you weren't creating more content for them to spin into their narrative, you were just living clean, being consistent, showing up as yourself day after day after day. Now people are looking back at the accusations and looking at you, and the math isn't mathing. The person they were told you were doesn't align with the person they're seeing you be, and that discrepancy is creating questions in minds that were previously closed. Your silence forced them to investigate with their own eyes instead of just accepting what they were told. Let's talk about what happened when they turned people against you, when your circle got smaller, when invitations stopped coming, when conversations went quiet as you approached, when people who used to embrace you suddenly had somewhere else to be. That isolation was intentional. It was part of their plan. They wanted you alone, vulnerable, desperate for connection. But you did something they never anticipated. You turned that isolation into insulation. You used the loneliness as protection. You recognized that being removed from certain spaces was actually removing you from contamination. Those people who walked away, they were revealing they were never really with you, and that's valuable information. You didn't chase anyone who left. You didn't beg people to stay who were already halfway out the door. You didn't try convincing anyone of your value who was determined to devalue you. You let them go. And in that release you created space for something better, for people who actually deserve access to you, for connections built on truth instead of convenience. The isolation also gave you something precious: time, energy, mental space, peace. When you're not maintaining relationships with people who don't value you, you're not exhausted from trying to prove yourself worthy of basic respect. You're not drained from walking on eggshells around people looking for reasons to condemn you. You're not depleted from giving energy to people who only take. You use that time to rebuild yourself stronger. You use that energy to heal parts of yourself you'd been ignoring. You use that mental space to gain clarity about who you are and what you actually want. You use that peace to connect with yourself in ways that weren't possible when you were surrounded by noise disguised as community. Now you're emerging from that isolation, insulated against the same type of dysfunction that tried to destroy you. You're protected by wisdom, guarded by discernment, shielded by boundaries you didn't have before. That isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And you're re-entering the world as someone who can't be manipulated the same way twice. They thought you were soft because you didn't snap. They mistook your silence for weakness, like you had nothing to say, like you were too afraid to stand up, like you were just going to fade quietly into the background. But what they didn't realize is that it took everything in you not to respond the way they expected, and that restraint was about to become your loudest statement. You had every reason to explode, to expose the truth, to flip everything upside down. You had the ammunition, the receipts, the evidence, the platform, and yet you didn't pull the trigger, not because you couldn't, but because you chose not to. That choice was power, the kind most people will never understand because they confuse noise with strength. You knew better. You weren't going to give them a show just to prove a point that didn't need proving. You weren't going to lower your energy to match their dysfunction. You weren't going to sacrifice your peace for temporary satisfaction. You saw the trap clearly. The moment you engage is the moment you lose. The second you start fighting in mud, nobody remembers who started it. They just see two people covered in dirt. So you stepped over it with grace that looked effortless, but cost you everything. That restraint didn't come from fear, it came from wisdom, from understanding that not every battle deserves your voice, not every insult deserves a comeback, not every attack deserves your energy. You didn't stay quiet because you were okay with what was happening. You stayed quiet because you were done playing small with people who thrive on drama. Your restraint became the statement that forced them to sit with their own behavior. There was no distraction, no deflection, no messy back and forth to confuse observers, just them and their actions, loud, exposed, echoing in the silence you left behind. That silence became a mirror, and they hated their reflection in it. You didn't call anyone out, you didn't make lists or drop names, you didn't write exposés or create evidence folders. You simply stood in your truth, calm, composed, consistent, and that alone exposed everything they were hiding. Your peace wasn't just an absence of conflict, it was confrontation with reality itself. Without uttering a word, you held up a mirror to their behavior, and they absolutely hated what they saw looking back. The truth is, they were never prepared to see themselves. Their whole game was built on deflection, projecting their pain onto you, blaming you for the chaos they created, twisting your reactions into proof of their lies. But when you didn't react how they scripted, when you refused to fall apart or fight dirty, the spotlight turned on them, and that mirror you became was merciless. It showed them everything they were running from, their jealousy consuming them, their insecurity disguised as confidence, their toxic patterns on full display for anyone paying attention. The way you carried yourself while being dragged made their dysfunction impossible to ignore. You weren't performing, you weren't pretending, you were just solid, rooted, and that quiet strength exposed the reality. Because deep down they knew they would have folded under the same pressure. They knew they couldn't have maintained what you maintained. You became the mirror that shattered their fake confidence. You reflected their manipulation without engaging it. Your stability exposed their chaos. Your authenticity made their mask slip. They wanted to destroy your image, but ended up confronting their own. They wanted to question your character, but revealed theirs instead. You handled everything like someone who understood the weight of every single move. While they were scheming in darkness, convinced no one would know, you carried yourself like the entire universe had eyes on you, because you understood something they couldn't comprehend. Nothing stays buried. Not lies, not truth, not energy. Everything comes full circle. The universe keeps perfect records. What's done in darkness comes to light. And you weren't about to stain your soul for temporary revenge against people already destroying themselves. That's what separated your approach. You didn't act from emotion. You acted from alignment. You weren't performing strength publicly. You were ensuring your energy stayed clean privately. You weren't answering to people. You were answering to something higher. You knew that even if nobody clapped for your integrity now, the universe was keeping score. The payout was being prepared. While they laughed and lied as if there were no consequences, you moved with divine accountability. You kept your hands clean, not for praise, not for recognition, but because you understood that dirty hands leave permanent stains. Actions ripple further than what we can see. Energy marks dimensions we can't perceive. You knew this, so you moved accordingly with wisdom that's rare in this generation. Most people only behave when they think someone's watching. They perform morality for audiences. They fake integrity for cameras. But you stayed consistent even alone, because your character isn't based on witnesses. It's rooted in who you are when nobody's looking, when nobody would ever know. That's real power. You didn't just escape it. You didn't just survive and move on. You transformed through it. That situation wasn't something to run from. It was something you rose inside of. Like phoenixes don't escape fire. They're reborn in it. And that's exactly what happened to you. While most people would have limped away bitter and broken, you emerged clearer, stronger, more aligned than ever before. You didn't crawl out begging for sympathy. You walked out standing tall as someone who gained something permanent, a new understanding of your power, a new definition of yourself. What they designed as your cage became your awakening. What they meant for destruction became your reconstruction. You didn't play victim even though you'd earned that card. You didn't let trauma rewrite your identity. You didn't let pain define who you'd become. Instead, you sat with it, worked through it, processed it healthily. Then you did the sacred work of metabolizing it. You transformed poison into medicine, wounds into wisdom, ashes into beauty. That's what people see when they look at you now. Not just someone who survived hell, but someone who transcended it without losing their soul in the flames. Someone who emerged refined instead of ruined. You're not bitter, not jaded, not hard or closed. You're wise. You carry scars, but they're not bleeding wounds. They're maps, blueprints proving healing is possible. Evidence you can endure the worst and emerge whole. Proof that survival doesn't require shrinking or becoming hard or losing yourself. You mastered yourself when everything was designed to make you lose control. You kept your power when they were certain you'd surrender it. You stayed beautiful when they were convinced you'd turn ugly. That's not just impressive, that's legendary. That's the mark of a true chosen one. Someone who walks through hell holding heaven in their hands. Someone who faces humanity's worst and still chooses to be their best version. They thought they could break you, but all they did was reveal how unbreakable you really are. They thought they could stop you, but all they did was redirect you towards something greater. They thought they could define you, But all they did was give you a platform to redefine what strength looks like, what grace looks like, what divine composure looks like when facing pure evil. You are living proof that the most powerful response isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the quiet dignity of someone who knows their worth, doesn't depend on being understood by people committed to misunderstanding them. Sometimes it's the peaceful confidence of someone who trusts divine timing more than human validation. Sometimes it's the calm assurance of someone who knows truth doesn't need defense because it defends itself. Your story isn't over. This chapter was just the beginning, just the foundation. And the same grace that carried you through the storm is the same grace about to elevate you beyond anything imaginable. Because chosen ones don't just survive, they don't just endure, they don't just make it through, they thrive, they transform, they transcend. And you're about to show everyone exactly what that looks like. Your best days aren't behind you, they're ahead of you, being prepared right now, being aligned right now, being orchestrated by forces working in your favor, even when you can't see them moving. So stand tall, walk proud, keep your head high, because you didn't just handle a disgusting situation, you mastered it. And that mastery is about to open doors no human hand can shut, create opportunities no enemy can block, elevate you to levels that make your past pain look like it was all part of the plan. Because it was, every bit of it. Every betrayal prepared you, every disappointment trained you, every moment you had to stay silent built the strength you just displayed. This is your moment, this is your time. You handled it exactly how you were supposed to. And the whole universe is about to reward you for it, in ways that will leave everyone who doubted you absolutely speechless.